Why does the United States pay higher drug prices than other countries? Because America's the only country in the world where 340B hospitals mark up drug prices and PBM middlemen charge billions in hidden fees. Meanwhile, Americans subsidize the research and development for new cures. Other countries benefit, but don't pay their fair share. Crack down on the middlemen. End the free riding. Lower drug prices. Go to balancethescales.org to learn more. Paid for by Pharma.
At Sierra, discover top workout gear at incredible prices, which might lead to another discovery. Your headphones haven't been connected this whole time. Awkward. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
It is Monday, June 16th, 2025. Welcome back to Hang Up and Listen, the sports podcast here at Slate. Back with you again. I'm Alex Kirshner. I'm a contributing writer for Slate, and I also co-host the college football podcast Split Zone Duo. We are approaching the longest podcast of the year, so happy podcast solstice to all of you. And this week, we are going to talk about the US Open, won on Sunday by JJ Spaun. It was a great window into what people do and don't want their national championship in golf to be, and all of the discussion came down, as it only does at the US Open, to the course itself, Oakmont Country Club near Pittsburgh. We will talk about the shocking trade in Major League Baseball, with the Red Sox sending Rafael Devers, heretofore their franchise player, to the San Francisco Giants, in exchange for a little bit more than a bag of balls, but not necessarily, in their view, much more than a bag of balls. And we'll have a great guest on to discuss the Oklahoma City Thunder's quest for an NBA championship, and in particular, how it's playing in the franchise's former home, Seattle. Jordan Ritter Conn of The Ringer will be with us. As usual, joining me this week is Lindsay Gibbs, the publisher of Power Plays, a newsletter that covers the biggest stories of the day in women's sports. Lindsay, how are you?
I'm doing so good. I want to wish our fathers on the podcast, our producer Kevin and my co-host Ben, happy belated Father's Day. And, to all you fathers who are listening, whether you're a father in reality or just in spirit, hope you had a great weekend.
Thank you.
Ben Lindbergh, how was your Father's Day?
It was great. Just playing some solitaire while we record right now in Stephen A's honor. Who among us hasn't second screened while we're working? I do have a question for you, though, Alex.
Yes.
As we are about to discuss, you were at Oakmont, near your native Pittsburgh, for the U.S. Open. And as some of our listeners may have heard on Peacock, multiple spectators were caught on mic shouting about Pirates owner Bob Nutting immediately after players took shots. And I have asked producer Kevin Bendis to tee up, so to speak, a clip.
Sell the team, Bob!
Yeah! Now, we have condemned the dudes who yell, "Get in the hole," after players putt. But Alex, do you condone yelling about Bob Nutting in this context? And do you deny having done so yourself?
I do condone it. And while I won't answer your second question directly, all I'll say in the words of Cassian Andor of the Disney Plus show Andor is, I have friends everywhere.
And I assume that one of your friends was Philip Barbary, who finished 24 over par, but made his first ever cut in a major with his wife as his caddy and wore a Pirates jersey for his final putt.
Yes, he was a local favorite, and I appreciated the U.S. Open in general for distracting me from the Pirates allowing all of 9 runs in 4 games at Wrigley Field and winning just one of those games. Really spectacular stuff going on with the Pittsburgh Baseball Club.
Sell the team, Bob.
Before we get into our business, as always, we want to thank our Slate Plus members for making this show possible. Subscribing helps us make the show, of course. It allows you to get the show ad-free. That's great. And you also get bonus segments. And we have one that really excites me this week, live now for Slate Plus members. We will discuss the somewhat sorry state of affairs around the U.S. men's national soccer team, which has been sputtering only a year ahead of a World Cup that will be played partly on home soil. We'll have a great guest for that, the soccer writer Kim McCauley. You can hear it right now as long as you're a Slate Plus member. Subscribe by going to Apple Podcasts and clicking Try Free at the top of our show page, or visit slate.com/hangupplus to get access wherever you listen.
Need to make it 2 putts.
What a putt by JJ Spaun, which happened to be to win his first major and one of the hardest golf tournaments that I think has ever been played, the 125th U.S. Open at Oakmont Country Club, as we say, near Pittsburgh. I was there watching this really hard brand of golf. As a number of players remarked this week, there is a pretty good case that Oakmont is the toughest course in the world, and it sure played like it this weekend. Spaun was the only player to finish under par, and only did it thanks to that nuke of a putt from 60 plus feet across the green in a driving rain. Oakmont is brutal because the greens are fast, the rough is very thick, very tall. It's also just long. It's got strategically placed bunkers to make players' lives really hard. And the scores were brutal. Basically everyone's except Spaun's. He's the only player who you could say even battled Oakmont to a draw over the course of this tournament. I always liked that the US Open is a bit more brutal, bearish than typical PGA Tour events. It's a true survival test where par is a great score, and a typical tour event has a winner double-digit strokes under par, but here that was obviously miles from being the case. A lot of the world's best players, Lindsay, were absolutely exhausted to be there. Rory McIlroy destroyed a tee box marker after one drive, went away he didn't want on Saturday. Did you feel physically challenged just watching this U.S. Open?
Felt physically challenged, and also on Sunday I felt cold. I just think there's a few things worse than like being soaked down to your socks. And I'm just thinking like about as that rain was pouring down and they're in the mud. I just think about hitting a golf shot that goes from one bunker to the other. And then as you're walking towards it, your feet are squishing, you know? And I just think that that's hell. Like I don't care how much money you are going to earn. Like that is just horrible. And thinking about that really kept me up at night. But this course was fascinating. I actually loved it because there were some opportunities for, like, I feel like I did watch some good golf somehow. But I also watched people battling the rain, the wind, the course, themselves, their first grade bully, their mother, their doubts, their fears, their hopes. And that's really what I want to see when a championship is on the line. Like, I want to see you have to go through all of your demons and take them down one by one. Which, gosh, that makes me sound like such a masochist, but it was really compelling theater.
Yeah, as hard as it is to be soaked yourself, I find that it's quite comforting to watch other people be soaked while I am sitting inside warm and dry, and they're just getting soaked for our own entertainment. So I did enjoy that, and I do like the difficulty. And we talked about how the PGA Championship doesn't really have an identity after all these years, and the US Open does, and it's just that it's really hard. And I like that there's variability in the difficulty among the majors. And I think that seeing pros suck is very relatable and also very illuminating because they didn't suck, of course. They're the best in the world. But the conditions sucked so much that they looked a little like maybe normal people do when we play golf, or attempt to at least. And that's good because it makes you recognize their greatness at all other times. It just makes it more obvious because under perfect conditions, they make it look easy. And we know intellectually that it's not actually easy, but to see them have to tough it out in conditions like that, I think actually is kind of eye-opening. And it does remind you just how much those conditions can come into play. Now, if all of golf were like that, I think that would be bad. I think that if only one person shot par and that was typical for the sport, that would be bad. It would suggest that par is probably in the wrong place. But I think when we see that once in a while, that's actually a refreshing change. And I assume it also introduces some randomness into the proceedings, because if you have perfectly predictable and consistent conditions, then maybe the best player's talent and skill just wins out more often than not. But if you introduce the rough and the wind and the weather, then suddenly JJ Spaun wins a major, and that's fun.
Yeah, I like that it seems to create a mixture of variability while still providing the proper championship test. Like JJ Spaun is a great U.S. Open champion. I don't feel the way that sometimes I feel after a less known, less highly ranked player wins one of these things. Like JJ Spaun survived the survival test. I mean, in his, I think, third hole of this round, he hit a lovely approach shot that should have settled within about 3 feet of the hole, but it hit the flagstick and rolled back like 50 yards. He bogeyed 5 of his first 6 holes and really had to get himself on track as the event went on. And I like that that's how it ended, and with him making a putt from outside 60 feet, because, it is possible, Ben, in an event like this, for the rough to be so thick and for the course to be so wet and difficult that, whoever wins becomes a matter of when your tee time was and if you had slightly easier conditions than everyone else. But instead what we got was the guy who led after the first round and was in the mix after every round of this tournament, just like refusing to submit to this really hard golf course. And that's what the U.S. Open winner should be. There's no question.
Yeah, and who looked like he was out of it at various times, including the front 9 in the final round, and then just suddenly got hot and was amazing right up until that final putt that we just heard the audio from. And yeah, if it were completely random, then that wouldn't be a true test of skill, and I think it would be unsatisfying. But if you're just introducing some adversity in a way that maybe mixes things up a little bit, then I think that's good on the whole, because I think it's generally beneficial for a sport, an individual sport, when one athlete goes on an incredible run. It's the kind of thing that can capture the casual's attention and just make us sit up and pay attention because someone is doing something historic or unprecedented. And Scottie Scheffler is really great at golf. But unless he's getting arrested, he doesn't seem to excite the imagination. He's not another Tiger. He might be the best golfer we've seen since Tiger, but it's not a national sensation. And so if that's the alternative, just someone like that winning again, and it's not necessarily like a Rory at the Masters sort of sentimental situation, then I think it is actually good to just have an unknown win every now and then to show that anything can happen. Again, you don't want anything to be able to happen at all times, because then it would just seem completely arbitrary. But when every now and then you have the Cinderella story and a guy who's barely won anything before suddenly breaking through like this, well, on some level, that is why we watch sports, to see the special story and to see the surprising outcome.
And it's important to note that he's had a really good season. He was, I think this time last year in the 160s in the world golf ranking. He's up to 25 before this tournament. Yeah. So he was on the upward trajectory. He just lost his playoff at, I believe, the Players to Rory. So he had been playing better golf and had carried momentum into this tournament. Of course, this was the biggest thing he'd ever done. But it was, to me, this was just such compelling theater on the back 9, even despite the kind of lull of the rain delay. And, because so many people were in the mix, and there's just very few things that are that exciting, is the back 9 of a golf tournament. It almost doesn't matter who's in contention as long as multiple people are. The stage is the star, right? You don't need stars when the stage is the star and the game is gaming that way. I mean, these were huge swings. 6 golfers had a share of the lead on Sunday at one point. At 1.5 were tied for first. There was a point on the back 9 where Hatton, who I should say should follow the rules of his last name and keep his hat on. My boyfriend was checking the odds and he was like, I think Hatton's going to get this. He's the favorite right now. And he was on the 16th and he was plus 150, the favorite to win. And then one hole later, after getting a bogey and being trapped, his odds had dropped to plus 5,000, just one hole. So like these were the type of swings we were watching throughout this afternoon. And it wasn't until the end when Spaun got those back-to-back birdies, becoming only the 5th U.S. Open winner ever to finish birdie after becoming the first U.S. Open winner to ever start a final round with 3 consecutive holes over par. Yeah. So we got a full journey. And we got a winner by who played the best golf at the end, too, which makes it special, right? This wasn't a battle of attrition in the way that it was the last man standing. Spaun still had to come up with his best stuff when it mattered the most in order to pull away from the pack, and he did just that.
Yeah, one of the nice things about a tournament where everyone's making bogeys is that the field can also come back to people. So it was very,
exactly.
Part of that mix was Scotty Scheffler, who started the day at, I believe, 4 over and was still sitting at 4 over for basically the whole round, starting to look at the end like a guy who might win even just by not moving, or if he made a birdie on 18 after he made a birdie on 17. Didn't work out that way, but typically in a golf tournament at this level, the field is not going to come back to you if you are not winning. You have to go and make birdies. It was a cool chaos element, Ben, that one of the many that I liked in this tournament coming down the stretch on Sunday.
This is what we lose in TGL, the simulated indoor golf that we have discussed. Unless they start adding sprinklers or fans to simulate the environmental effects, you can make the rough very rough, the virtual rough, but can the players be physically soaked? That's the next frontier. It's funny, mentioning Scheffler, he was actually among the players who were kind of lamenting the sameness of course design these days, using Oakmont as an example, because there used to be more oaks at Oakmont. Decades ago, they removed many trees, which has kind of been a trend in golf course design. And players have lamented this not from an environmentalist standpoint necessarily, but just in terms of the diversity of the courses and the way that it forces you to play differently. So Scheffler said just recently, they take out all the trees and they make the greens bigger, and they typically make the fairways a little bigger as well. And so the only barrier to guys just trying to hit it as far as they want to or need to, it's trees. Suggesting perhaps that Oakmont is not hard enough, that they should replant some trees. But that's something you've talked about, Alex, when it comes to the benefits of maybe deadening the drivers or deadening the ball, that there's just a little bit too much stylistic sameness when it comes to how players approach holes, and that introducing those barriers can actually help from an entertainment standpoint, just because it forces players to do different things. So maybe that's the takeaway. Oakmont's not difficult enough.
I think in general, I feel pretty strongly that the LPGA Tour offers a more differentiated week-to-week golf product that is more fun to watch if you are just a golf purist than the PGA Tour is, because the players don't hit the ball as far. And so there is much more strategy involved in it. But what I thought was funny about this tournament, this is something that Scotty Scheffler talked about, I want to say after his round on Friday, is that Oakmont almost doesn't even have that strategy, because the course is so long that on most of the holes, there's really nothing you can do but hit driver and just deal with it when you hit it in the rough, which leads to funny things. I mean, in general, I want strategy. I want players having to go over different club options off the tee. But I also enjoyed watching Viktor Hovland, one of the, 5 or 7 best players in the world, hit a drive into the right rough and then try to go for the green in 2 on the second hole at Oakmont on Friday, and hit the ball like 20 yards forward into the lip of a bunker, and then have to hit out sideways and make double bogey. If he'd have hit iron off that tee, he would have had a much longer second shot, probably would have made bogey and lost strokes that way. So at some point, like, the course gets so hard that there is no strategizing around it, and you just have to hit driver. But Oakmont's one of the few courses that can stand up to it. And it is one of the few. That place is huge. It's a massive property. It's basically a small city. You can't, for the sustainability of golf, build golf courses that long and that big all over the world that can host these events. Just not enough space.
Yeah, constraints force creativity in all genres and mediums, including podcasting, I guess, which is why we tend to keep these segments to 15 to 20 minutes. It makes us get creative and keep everything punchy, hopefully. But yeah, I want to see players forced to do different things, and also just different types of players and different skill sets potentially being viable.
Well, speaking of one player who was deemed not viable by his team, Rafael Devers traded by the Boston Red Sox on the same day that this U.S. Open wrapped up. We'll talk about it right after the break. This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Make another smart choice with Auto Quote Explorer to compare rates from multiple car insurance companies all at once. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy. As we progress through the season, every fan knows that big wins are hard to come by and tough losses are even harder to accept. But do you know what isn't hard to accept? Discover. Believe it or not, Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. You heard that right. 99%. So make a good call for your wallet and get Discover. Based on the February 2024 Nielsen report. Learn more at discover.com/creditcard. The baseball world was stunned on Sunday evening when the Boston Red Sox traded their best hitter and really the closest thing they have had for the last half decade to the face of a franchise, Rafael Devers, to the San Francisco Giants. We have talked about Devers' situation on this show in the past couple of weeks, and as it turns out, this trade amounted to a salary dump, with Devers owed about $250 million over 8 more seasons, and the Red Sox seemingly not wanting to pay that money. The Giants took on the whole contract. But as we've talked about, there's more going on. There was an entire drama in the run-up to the season with Rafael Devers, where the Red Sox signed a better third baseman, Alex Bregman, asked Devers to move to DH. He did it only after some relatively public disagreement with the team. Later, they wanted to move him to first base after an injury to their first baseman. He didn't want to do that. The sides seemed to just get sick of each other from a lot of the reporting that's been out there since this trade. So, is it a salary dump? Is it removing a malcontent? Is it a heinous squandering of a franchise player a la Babe Ruth and Mookie Betts in Red Sox history? Or, Ben, is it a little bit of all of the above?
Yeah, definitely a little bit of column A, B, and C here. I would not have expected that we would devote 2 segments to Rafael Devers on Hang Up this season, but this one flows from the first one because the last one was when we talked about the positional drama and whether he would DH and then whether he would move to first base and his declining to do so. And that was sort of the impetus for this trade. But it is really incredible to think about just, I don't know if I want to say how far the Red Sox have come because that makes it appear to be progress. And if anything, it's the opposite. But you flash back to 2018 when the Red Sox won the World Series, had a franchise record 108 regular season wins, just sailed through the postseason. And the foundation of that club was 3 homegrown guys in their early to mid-20s, Mookie Betts, Xander Bogaerts, and Rafael Devers. And now they're all gone. And the Red Sox have been mostly mired in mediocrity ever since. And I think the Betts trade, of course, came to mind immediately here. And there are some similarities and also some quite notable differences. But the reason this is so surprising, there are a few reasons, really. A, it's that you don't typically see players get traded a year and a half into a 10-year extension. The Mookie trade, if anything, was more typical. I mean, it was unprecedented to have a young player who was that good for a big market team be shipped out. But that is when you typically tend to see players like that traded when the team realizes, oh, they're nearing free agency. We're unwilling or unable to keep them. We might as well get something while we can. This is even odder for it to happen in this sequence. Plus, it's mid-June, which is a month or more before the trade market typically heats up. We've probably already seen the biggest trade of this baseball season's trade season. And also, the Red Sox are in the thick of the playoff race. They are very much in contention. They are barely out of the 3rd AL wildcard spot. And Rafael Devers is their best hitter. And so it is a very odd time to decide to cut bait on the latest face of the franchise. The Red Sox are just making a habit of sending superstars packing.
I have to say this shocked me because I'm like for all the reasons that Ben said, but I also think it put into perspective even more so how wild the Luka trade was, because they're like, even in our group chat, we were like, is this like the new Luka? Like, is this leading the show? How big of a deal is this? And once you read it, everything seems rational compared to the Luka trade. You know what I mean? Like, I was reading through it. I was like, oh, I kind of see why the Red Sox did this. Like, these are actual legitimate reasons. And, they're handling this pretty well because they haven't fat shamed him in the media. And we're almost like 18 hours later. So for me, it was kind of...
Which is funny because he's a bit of a big guy. They could. They haven't done it, though.
They really held back. So I think as, poorly as the Red Sox managed all this, I think frustrated as their fans have every right to be, and as shocking as this is, just because in the cadence of the baseball season, the cadence of these contracts, and the, cadence of like needing superstars for a team, this isn't typically what happens. I do think there are rational justifications for it, he wasn't what they were looking for in their locker room, and they wanted to get out of this contract long term and saw a way to do so. And but I think that I would be reacting much differently if Luka wasn't the new barometer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I comped the Luka trade to the Mookie trade, so it's all just one big circle of Red Sox trades and the Luka trade. But you're right. Now, Devers is not Mookie, of course. The thing is that he was the one who stayed. So Mookie was shipped out before free agency. The Red Sox allowed Bogaerts to leave during free agency. They made sort of face-saving offer, but they were blown out of the water by the Padres, who ended up signing Bogaerts. And the Red Sox probably don't regret that because Bogaerts has declined pretty steeply since then. Then again, the Red Sox have not actually replaced him with better players, or at least hadn't until just recently when they called up their new generation, their new trio, the new Mookie and Bogaerts and Devers of Christian Campbell and Marcelo Meyer and Roman Anthony. That's the hope for this franchise now. And Devers, there were real concerns about how he would age and how he will play in his 30s. You mentioned the conditioning, Alex, and there's a reason why this whole drama about what position he would play or whether he would play any position arose. It's because he did decline on defense to the point where he was a net negative there. And so if he's a bat-only guy, well, then he really has to hit. And to his credit, he has. By some measures, he's having a career year, despite an ice-cold start that he had this spring. There's some other stats under the hood that point to potential decline, but really, he's been the backbone of their offense, especially when Alex Bregman, his replacement at third base, has been out with a quad strain for some time. But he is a much more limited player than Mookie. And because of the contract, as big as it is, there were people reporting that other teams were surprised that the Red Sox got anything back, that maybe they would have been lucky just to do the salary dump and not have to eat any of the money to get another team to take Devers. So no, they didn't get a great package back here, but they got a couple major league pitchers. They got a couple prospects, one of whom is fairly highly rated. And they got out from under the money, plus they put the whole squabble behind them and all the discord that they've had with Devers. And as we've discussed in the past, I think there is blame on both sides when it comes to that whole situation. And the Red Sox, I think, sort of disgraced themselves with the way that they approached that. But also Devers didn't cover himself in glory when it came to being a team first player and saying, sure, put me in coach. Conditions have changed and I'm willing to play wherever I can help the team. So it really just got out of hand. It's kind of amazing that the Red Sox are where they are, sort of underachieving, but still very much in the race. And yet they have decided to hurt themselves for this season. I mean, there's really no other way to regard that unless they have some other move up their sleeve in the next few weeks, unless they're going to put their savings to good use here. And there's no telling that they're going to do that because John Henry is just not investing in the Red Sox roster the way that he did before they won 4 World Series championships. That same urgency is not there.
Ben, I want to talk about that roster flexibility point and what John Henry may or may not do, probably may not do, because I think that's where this gets really interesting as a sports theory case to evaluate. I think everyone agrees that towards the end of this Rafael Devers contract, on a pure wins for dollars basis, this is going to be what you would call a bad contract by the end of it. He's already a lousy defender. He's probably not going to be hitting much in 6 years when he's still making, deep into the 8 figures a year. I think everyone gets that. And so you can sort of sell it as, in sort of the money balling of it all, you can sort of sell the trade that way. But the thing that trips me up about it, and I saw this very well argued by Ben Clemens in Fangraphs after the trade, is that ultimately we're not playing a computer sim game where you're trying to maximize war for dollars. And the way that baseball works, you just mentioned Anthony and Campbell and Meyer. I think they gave Campbell a kind of a bargain basement extension a few weeks ago, if I recall correctly. But, their great hopes are all going to be paid peanuts for the next 6 to 7 years as they're on the artificially deflated wage scale that players have before free agency. And so because you don't get a trophy for winning the most games per dollar, but instead just for winning the most games and then winning more of them in the postseason, it would really bug me as a Red Sox fan that it feels like my team is trying to win a prize for financial efficiency rather than for actual winning. Because at a certain point, I don't care how much you're paying per win. I just care that you're getting the wins. And players like Devers have their contracts subsidized by the half of your roster or more that is playing on an artificially low wage. That's what would piss me off about this. If I were a Red Sox fan, I'd say, oh, great, John Henry has more financial flexibility now. And, it's not going to be a great contract. Number one, not my money. Number two, your team is worse now. And for what benefit? For whose benefit?
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you're the aforementioned Pittsburgh Pirates, then your only viable way to win, if your owner will not spend, is to put together a core of young, inexpensive pre-arbitration or pre-free agency players and hope that they're good enough to win for a while, which is what happened with the Pirates of a decade or more ago. And then that peters out because if there's no ownership support, then eventually those guys are going to get expensive and they're going to leave. And the Red Sox are playing in a different market and should be playing a different form of financial baseball here. This used to be the top spending team in baseball. This used to be a team that was giving the Yankees a run for their literal money. And now, after Devers is removed from the roster, the Red Sox are barely a top 10 payroll. If that, it depends on the source. And okay, if that's a temporary state of affairs and they're planning to reinvest in the roster, maybe there are more efficient ways that they could allocate those dollars, given that they did have a bit of a positional logjam and that there were prospects who were in danger of losing out on playing time as long as Devers was there. But does anyone have confidence that they will do that at this point? I think they have squandered all of that goodwill, all of the success that they had when Henry took over the team and then had this incredible run and ended the curse, etc. And then since 2018, they have just been content to be more of a middle of the pack club. And, they're part of this larger Fenway Sports Group portfolio, along with Liverpool, along with your Pittsburgh Penguins, along with a NASCAR team, even a TGL team. And so it just seems like there's less urgency now. And, you could say that they don't need to spend as much because if that young crop of prospects that they have just promoted is good, then they will be worth much more than they are being paid for the foreseeable future. And that could bring payroll down. But if you're the Red Sox, then that's all the more reason to splurge on someone like Devers or someone else. And, it's not like they haven't spent on anyone. Obviously, they signed Alex Bregman, which kind of created all of this drama in the first place. They traded for Garrett Crochet and then signed him to an extension. But these are the Boston Red Sox, and their fans are accustomed to them being one of the freest spending teams in baseball. And if they are pinching pennies, then that's not great because they're in the AL East, and it's pretty tough to compete there. And it certainly helps to have Rafael Devers.
Look, I always say I turn a little bit more towards baseball once the NBA finals are over. They are making me pay attention a little bit ahead of schedule this year. We got Shohei Ohtani pitching on Monday evening, apparently, right about maybe when you all are listening to this podcast. Very excited about that. I think it's hysterical that the Red Sox had just swept the Yankees and had this big moment. And then it was like 2 hours later, this trade happened. There's a lot happening. But I guess my biggest question, Ben, is, well, what position will Devers play for the Giants?
Oh, yeah. How about that?
Yeah. Well, he is just as blocked at third base as he was in Boston, because the Giants have Matt Chapman, maybe the best defensive third baseman of the era, who was signed to an extension recently. And really, we should give some credit to the Giants and to their president of baseball operations, Buster Posey. We've been looking at this through a Red Sox lens, but this is a big move by the Giants, who find themselves sort of unexpectedly in a playoff race and have a good bullpen and a strong starting rotation and a below average lineup. And their park plays a role, but they have really had a dearth of power hitters dating back to Barry Bonds' departure. And Devers might be the best hitter that this franchise has had since Posey himself. So he has shown a willingness and a capacity to make major moves in his short time at the helm here. Not all of them have worked out great, but Chapman was working out great before he got hurt. He should be back soon. And hey, now National League teams need DHs too, because we're in the universal DH era. So Devers may very well continue to DH, which I think will probably bother him a little less in San Francisco, because he's the new guy there. He's not the incumbent who thought he had that position on lock for years to come and had been playing it since 2017. And Chapman was the guy who was there before he was. So he might play some first base at some point, but it doesn't make much difference really whether he DHs or plays first, probably, to his overall value. He has to hit, and the Giants really need left-handed power, and that's exactly what Devers provides. And lastly, yes, I'm excited about Ohtani and his return as a two-way player. I have also been on the Sports Pope beat, and Pope Leo was just photographed wearing a White Sox cap. That's the latest development here. And he also tweeted a few statements about sports, including this one that is highly relevant to the White Sox, but also maybe relevant to fans of the other Sox, the Red Sox right now. The Pope tweeted, "In our competitive society where it seems that only the strong and winners deserve to live, sport also teaches us how to lose. It forces us in learning the art of losing, to confront our fragility, our limitations, and our imperfections. It is through the experience of these limits that we open our hearts to hope." So, Red Sox fans have lost Rafael Devers. They are experiencing the limits of Red Sox ownership's spending. And so maybe they can now open their hearts to hope.
Thank you, Ben. Up next, we'll talk about the Oklahoma City Thunder, or more specifically, what they were before. This episode is sponsored by the San Diego State University Sports MBA program. SDSU's Sports MBA is a full-time, in-person graduate program that trains students for sports business roles with team front offices, agencies, venues, brands, and more. The program's curriculum includes all of the quantitative coursework of a typical MBA, but adds a sports focus with themes familiar to regular Hang-Up listeners, such as the growth of women's sports, labor relations, athletes' rights, and social responsibility. SDSU Sports MBA students even spend a week studying abroad in the Dominican Republic to learn about the many ways Major League Baseball's presence impacts the country. Throughout their studies, students serve as interns, consultants, and part-time employees with sports organizations across Southern California, including the San Diego Padres. Applications are currently being accepted through July 1st for an August 2025 start. Visit sdsu.edu/hangup to learn more and apply. That's sdsu.edu/hangup. This episode is sponsored by the San Diego State University Sports MBA program. SDSU's Sports MBA is a full-time, in-person graduate program that trains students for sports business roles with team front offices, agencies, venues, brands, and more. The program's curriculum includes all of the quantitative coursework of a typical MBA, but adds a sports focus with themes familiar to regular Hang-Up listeners, such as the growth of women's sports, labor relations, athletes' rights, and social responsibility. SDSU Sports MBA students even spend a week studying abroad in the Dominican Republic to learn about the many ways Major League Baseball's presence impacts the country. Throughout their studies, students serve as interns, consultants, and part-time employees with sports organizations across Southern California, including the San Diego Padres. Applications are currently being accepted through July 1st for an August 2025 start. Visit sdsu.edu/hangup to learn more and apply. That's sdsu.edu/hangup.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game, shifting a little money here, a little there, just hoping it all works out? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can be a better budgeter and potentially lower your insurance bill, too. You tell Progressive what you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll help you find options within your budget. Try it today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
The Oklahoma City Thunder may be on the verge of winning the first NBA championship in Thunder history. That's going to finish a little bit too late for publication time in those old newspaper deadline days, which I'm sure we all remember. But the title would not be the first in franchise history because, of course, the Seattle SupersSonics. The Sonics relocated to OKC in 2008 and left behind a fan base that supported the team robustly through decades of business and arena turmoil that ultimately led the NBA and the ownership group of the team to head to Oklahoma. The Thunder are a fun team, and you are welcome to be happy for them if they win. We all like watching Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. But as they've been on this run, we've wondered to ourselves here at Hang Up HQ a few times, what has this been like to watch from the place they left? And to talk about it, we've got Jordan Ritter Conn on the program. Jordan is a senior staff writer at The Ringer, where he works with Ben, and he is the host of a 9-episode Ringer podcast called Sonic Boom: How Seattle Lost Its Team. Jordan, quick refresher, because I'm not sure that there's a lot of agreement between, let's say, Sonics fans and the NBA office around this issue. But how did Seattle lose its team, given my memory that Sonics fans really cared and turned out for the Sonics?
Try to compress a many-episode series into one short response.
It is a long story, but it is it's one that can be boiled down to ownership wanted a new arena. That ownership in the early 2000s was led by Howard Schultz, and this was a time when what was the Staples Center had recently been built. Other arena, American Airlines Arena in Dallas had recently been built. The NBA was moving toward these arenas that prioritized luxury seating, prioritized high-end amenities to get kind of corporate buy-in, to just kind of maximize every dollar that they could get from every seat in the house. And Seattle was in a place where they had recently built a new stadium for the Seahawks. They had recently built a new stadium for the Mariners. And it's a city that's very progressive in its ideals and not prone in many ways to seeing a ton of benefit in giving public money to billionaires to fund their stadiums. And when the third billionaire came along and Howard Schultz asking for money to fund his stadium, the city didn't really want to do it. And there are all sorts of complicated reasons for that, and all sorts of characters on all sides that were involved in that fight. But ultimately, Howard Schultz decided to sell the team to a man named Clay Bennett from Oklahoma City, who he had, I think it's fair to say, Schultz had deluded himself into thinking that surely that this man coming up here from Oklahoma City, a city that had just hosted the New Orleans Hornets when they were displaced after Katrina and completely fallen in love with NBA basketball with that team. Surely this man is coming up here from Oklahoma City because he sees what I see, which is that Seattle is such an amazing place, such an amazing market for the NBA. Surely he will want to keep them here rather than going back to his newly basketball-obsessed hometown, where he could be a sort of hero delivering to that city something that it's never had before, which is a major professional sports franchise. And all of this took place between about 2006 and 2008. And soon the Thunder were Russell Westbrook was drafted and put on a Seattle SupersSonics hat in 2009, and he played his first game as a rookie for the Oklahoma City Thunder just a few months later. And now here we are.
So, Jordan, 17 years is long enough that there's a generation of Thunder fans, and for that matter, Seattleites, who don't really remember the SuperSonics. For those who do, how raw is the wound, and to what extent is OKC's current success rubbing salt in it?
I think it really varies. I think it was the first time the Thunder made the finals with Durant and with Durant, someone who Seattle had fallen completely in love with as a rookie, and with Westbrook. It was incredibly raw. They're these two guys who I talked to in the podcast who made a film called Sonicsgate. This kind of an activist perspective of kind of how they lost their team. And these two fans paid to go to games for that 2012 finals in Miami, dressed in Gary Payton and Sean Kemp jerseys, sitting near courtside, just so they could yell the entire game that Oklahoma City was cursed, that they would never win a title until Seattle had a team, and that Durant should leave if he knew it was best for him. And so the emotions were incredibly intense back then. I think now I do believe, I've spoken to a couple of fans in the last week or so, and I know some old wounds have come back up, but it does feel a little bit different given the fact that some people have forgotten that this was even the case. There are fans in Oklahoma City who have no idea that their team even came from Seattle.
That's crazy.
They're
although how American is that? My goodness. Yeah.
Well, think about a 13, 14-year-old kid who's obsessed with the team that has been there since before they were born.
Alex hates this kid.
That's right.
Alex has no time for that kid.
I'm sure they're probably putting in textbooks in Oklahoma City that it was an expansion franchise in 2009. Yeah.
Someone needs to. That'll be the next
creationist myth that was the Thunder.
But I do think that it has dissipated a little bit. I talked to one fan who had been to Oklahoma City for work, and he was like, you know what, I'm going to go to a game and see what this is like. And kind of to his great disappointment, people were very nice to him. Strangers bought him drinks at a bar. He was stunned by how much cheaper the concessions were there than in Seattle. And so, time has taken that away a little bit, but everyone thought Seattle would have a team by now, and they don't. And the fact that they still don't, it keeps the wound open for sure.
Jordan, I know that that's an area that you covered in the last episode of your series, which I remember listening to at the time that it came out, and I enjoyed it. You say there's a surprise that they don't have a team right now, but everyone notices that there is an arena now because the NHL has a team there that has a very nice looking arena. And so is hope still sort of bubbling in Seattle?
Absolutely. The NBA is talking, Adam Silver has made several references to the possibility of expansion. I think that there's scheduled to be another Board of Governors meeting in July in Las Vegas. And there's any time owners get together to meet fans in Seattle, hope that there is a press conference at the end of that meeting that announces a move toward expansion. And that hope just grows and grows and grows slowly, but it's very much there. There's an arena there that has all of the amenities that they were once lacking in Seattle. There is a fan base there that would just absolutely lose its mind the moment that it was announced that a team is returning. It seems to make too much sense from a business perspective for there not to be a team there, and so. Yeah, I would say hope is at the highest it has been in a long, long time in Seattle right now.
Someone who covers the WNBA, of course, one of my favorite ownership stories is how these businesswomen from Seattle were able to save the Seattle Storm from this move to Oklahoma City, because the original plan was for the Seattle Storm to go with the Sonics to Oklahoma City. And I mean, let's be honest, nobody really cared about the Storm in this deal. These women did, and were able to kind of come together and save it for the city. I think that's, given, I know it's not the same as an NBA team, but it has had a lot of success and I think allow professional basketball to keep a presence in Seattle. I was there for the WNBA All-Star game, maybe 2017, I think, 2016, sometime in a different lifetime. But I was amazed by the amount of support in that city. One thing that's interesting in this, a couple of things. First of all, he sold it just for $350 million. Schultz sold the team, which just is, it's staggering how much valuations have increased in what feels like, now that I'm in my late 30s, not that long of a time period. But also that the Seattle has really held on to the team's history in emotional ways, but also very literal ones. There's been reporting, and you talked about the Seattle Museum of History and Industry, which has over 5,000 Sonics related items. Only 3 are publicly displayed, though: the trophy, the game worn shoes, and a team pennant. So it seems to me like the technical history kind of stayed with the Thunder. Like this will technically be the second, if they win, the second title for that franchise. But the second Seattle gets a team, those stats will revert back to Seattle. How does that work?
That is the understanding of everyone that I have spoken to. And the Thunder, to their credit, do nothing really as an organization to claim any of that history for themselves. That there are no banners hanging in Oklahoma City for anything that the franchise accomplished in Seattle. And I can't report definitively on kind of the language that was in the contract of the sale regarding that, but my understanding is that there was something of a gentleman's, for lack of a better term, agreement between the two, and that they are, Seattle will get that history back. That those records, those jerseys that to be retired. That there's a long line of players who are hoping to have their jerseys retired in Seattle someday. Kind of, there is an understanding. I think Oklahoma City, to their credit, most people who were around at the time understand the pain to some degree, at least, of what Seattle went through, and understand that they are villains in someone else's story. And but from their perspective, it's just, well, we wanted to have a basketball team, and now we have a basketball team, and that's amazing. Sorry, not sorry. Exactly. But I do think that there is kind of an understanding that, like, that franchise. The iconography, I mean, the colors, the green and gold, you see all over Seattle, in large part because of the Storm, and because they have the same colors and similar, kind of similar iconography to the Sonics, and then also you see Sonics gear all over the city. And I do think that just the understanding that when the Sonics come back, everything about the Sonics comes back, except for those intervening years that have been lost forever.
As you may have heard last week, our boss, Bill Simmons, speaking to Chuck Klosterman on Bill's show, engaged in some sliding doors, alternate history speculation about what would have happened had the Sonics stayed in Seattle. And in Bill's vision of that past, the Sonics become a powerhouse. They win 4 titles. Chuck disagreed, but the foundation was there already. So Sam Presti was hired in Seattle in 2007. As you mentioned, Durant debuted in the Sonics last season and won Rookie of the Year. Westbrook was drafted shortly before the relocation. So do you see the case that if they had kept that team together there, that this sort of success would have found the franchise before now? That maybe Durant is not the itinerant superstar. Maybe he's just a career Seattle Supersonic. What would have played out differently, do you think?
I can tell you that among people in Seattle, not only fans but people who were involved with the franchise at that time, they do hold on to kind of that belief, like that belief when it comes to that what if, that Durant had a special connection with the city, that it was this place that he moved after 1 year at Texas and then having grown up in Maryland, and all of a sudden he's on the West Coast and learning to be an adult and being embraced by this fan base in this city in new ways, and that he has maintained a connection to people who were involved with the franchise at the time, that there are people that he only worked with that rookie year who were part of the team in Seattle, who he's maintained friendships with over the years. They have the belief that they were building something special. And like you said, Sam Presti was there, like the probably the greatest GM of this century in the NBA, or at least arguably. He was already there. He would probably still be there. And so many of the pieces of what the Thunder have experienced were there. And I do think that it's fair to speculate that, that there might have been more continuity than that previous iteration of the Thunder had. But also, you can't predict what individuals are going to choose about their own futures and their own careers, and who knows what Kevin Durant would have gone through that might or might not have led to him deciding to stay there or go somewhere else. But I just can definitely say that people in Seattle have the informed opinion that there would have been some real continuity and that they could have had something special for sure.
His name is Jordan Ritter Conn, and the podcast is Sonic Boom: How Seattle Lost Its Team. You can find it where you get podcasts. It's an excellent Ringer series that lives on and is especially relevant as we watch the end of these NBA Finals. Jordan, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Yeah, thank you so much to all three of you. I really enjoyed it.
Now it's time for Afterballs. In this part of the show before, I have talked about one of my favorite things in sports, which is lopsided tennis head-to-heads. And we have another fun one that emerged this week. Alexander Zverev is, any way you look at it, a more accomplished tennis player than Taylor Fritz, the American. They're about the same age and height. But Zverev has won 190 more matches and about $30 million more in his career than the American. Last spring, Zverev beat Fritz in the quarters of a Clay Masters Series event in Rome, bringing his head-to-head against Fritz to 5-3, which really made sense given the context of who the two men are in tennis. But then at Wimbledon last year, everything changed. Fritz has since beat Zverev 5 times in a row, and not on small stages. The first win came in the round of 16 at Wimbledon in a 5-set thriller last year. He then knocked Zverev out at the quarterfinals of the US Open. He beat him in Laver Cup. He beat him in the semifinals of the ATP Finals. And this year in 2025, they finally met again this season at the Stuttgart final in grass over the weekend, where Taylor Fritz won 6-3, 7-6. And Zverev said in the post-match ceremony on court that Fritz needs to stay away from him. He was joking, but was he really? Making this all even more delicious is the fact that Zverev is not a good guy. And he has been accused multiple times of domestic violence. He has denied those accusations. But the tennis world has been very hesitant to speak out against him in any way. He's gotten no punishments from the ATP. And the tennis world, while he has been facing these troubling allegations, has just moved on. The one person to even kind of allude to this has been Taylor Fritz's girlfriend, Morgan Riddle, who at Wimbledon last year, in a since-deleted Instagram video, celebrated Fritz's win over Zverev with a caption that included, "When your man wins for the girls." So I want to ask, Ben, what have you been doing for the girls?
Well, last week the WNBA did something for the girls. It tipped off a campaign called Line 'Em Up, which will paint the WNBA's orange three-point line onto public courts across the country as a means of inspiring girls and women. This line is about more than paint, said Bethany Donovan, the league's head of operations. The line is about presence. It is about representation. It is about knowing that you have a piece of this incredible game and all of the opportunities that it can afford you. The inaugural line was painted at Brooklyn Bridge Park, less than 2 miles from the Barclays Center, where the New York Liberty play. In fact, Liberty guard Marquisha Davis was on hand for the event. Davis has attempted and made only one three-pointer in her 27-game WNBA career, but if she needed another reminder about the importance of the three-point line, she got one on Saturday, when Caitlin Clark lined him up 7 times from downtown while delivering the Liberty's first loss of the season. The highlight was a flurry of 3 threes she sank on consecutive possessions toward the end of the first quarter, from 33, 27, and 31 feet, respectively.
Clark, another long three. She's back! The most dynamic player in the game. 9 points in 38 seconds for Caitlin. She hit all 3 threes.
And not only 9 and 30, but look at the depth on these field goal attempts. She's certainly feeling it. Left side, right side. Now come back to your favorite spot again. It doesn't matter if there's a hand in her face.
Earlier, she'd drained a 3 from 34 feet. I think the term logo 3 is thrown around too liberally, especially since half-court logo dimensions differ depending on the court, but this three-point heave was close to qualifying. Overall, Clark's comeback from a 5-game absence because of a quad strain went as well as the Fever could have hoped. She scored 32 with 9 assists and 8 rebounds as the Fever topped the Liberty 102-88. Clark's 7 threes tied her career record, and the Fever's 17 threes tied their franchise record. However, the W's three-point fever is neither a Fever effect nor a Caitlin Clark effect. The day before Clark's big game, the Atlanta Dream's Ryan Howard, who leads the league in three-point attempts and makes, tied the WNBA single-game record with 9 three-pointers. And the Liberty, who actually lead the league in three-point attempt rate, set a team regular season single-game record with 19 threes on May 22nd, and then tied their own tally on June 1st. This is all part of what appears to be a big uptick in three-point shooting. Stop me if you've heard that before. People are probably sick of NBA three-pointer discourse, which we've discussed right here on Hang Up, but can I interest anyone in WNBA three-pointer discourse? Well, we're going to get some one way or another if these early stats stick. Through Sunday's games, 37.2% of field goal attempts have been three-pointers this season, up from 33.5% last season. If that holds, it'll be by far the biggest year-over-year bump in WNBA history, and less than 5 percentage points behind the NBA's 42.1%. When the WNBA debuted in 1997, its three-point attempt rate was slightly lower than the NBA's had been in 96 to 97. But that was the tail end of the 3-year period during the mid-90s when the NBA experimented with a shallower line. The next year, the NBA moved the line back to its current distance, placing the arc 23 feet 9 inches from the basket. And for the following 15 consecutive seasons, the W's three-point attempt rate was higher than the NBA's. That finally changed in 2013, when for the second time in a decade, the WNBA pushed its three-point arc back, this time to the location that the W, along with FIBA and the NCAA, still uses, 22 feet, 1.75 inches from the basket. In the 13 seasons since then, the NBA's attempt rate has been higher than the WNBA's, and the gap has only grown as the NBA's analytics takeover has sent its three-point rate soaring. However, the WNBA's rate, like the NBA's and the NCAA's, has been increasing steadily, especially since the late 2010s, when the Washington Mystics and the aforementioned Seattle Storm kicked things into a higher gear. In 2019, then Mystics coach and GM Mike Thibault said, "We think we're doing better, but we're not close to what we'd like to be." He also said, "I hope people don't catch up to us yet. I hope we can stay ahead of the curve for a while." Those Mystics led the league by a lot, but their rate would rank 8th this season, and this year, the Storm and the Mystics are bringing up the rear. Generally, the NBA and WNBA attempt rates have moved more or less in lockstep, with a 0.91 correlation over time between the two rates. As one of Clark's current teammates, Kelsey Mitchell, said in 2020, after leading the W in three-point attempts in 2019, blame it on Steph Curry. But this year's league-wide leap in the W has shrunk the WNBA-NBA difference to its smallest margin since 2016. Last year, the Liberty were the lone WNBA team with an attempt rate over 40%. Now they're one of 5, along with the expansion Golden State Valkyries, the Dream, the Phoenix Mercury, and the Las Vegas Aces. Every sports league is a copycat league, and what we're seeing in the W resembles what we just saw in the NBA. The Celtics won the championship last season, and not only did they raise their rate this season, but a bunch of other teams followed their lead. Last season, the Celtics were the only team to attempt more than 45% of their field goal attempts from three-point range. This season, they were one of 6, as the league rate climbed above 40% for the first time. In this respect, the Celtics were to the NBA what the Liberty are to the WNBA, as much as that comparison might pain New Yorkers and Bostonians. As in the NBA, WNBA players have managed to maintain their three-point success rate even as their attempt rate has kept climbing. The three-point make rate this season, 33.2%, is better than it was in 2013, even though the attempt rate is almost 3/4 higher than it was back then. So there's every reason to think that there's more room for the rate to grow. Of course, there are some significant stylistic differences between the two leagues in both offense and officiating. The height of the baskets is the same in both leagues, but NBA players are about 6 inches taller than WNBA players on average. Hence, dunks are rarer in the W. The lack of those high-percentage two-point plays would seem to make three-point attempts even more rewarding. But W defenders are aware of that, and thus they have all the more reason to guard against three-pointers. When they do, their opponents take advantage of that spacing to drive and dunk more, and the cat-and-mouse game continues. For all the WNBA's improvements in three-point shooting, the league's offensive rating, or points produced per 100 possessions, is roughly the same this season as it was in 2016, whereas the NBA's is about 8 points higher. So there may be more optimization to be done. In the meantime, though, you can count on more clips like this.
An impressive showing by the New York Liberty here tonight, pouring in 99 points and a WNBA single-game record of 19 three-point makes.
And more highlights like this.
She had the tongue out and everything. She wants it.
Oh, he check Howard. Oh, splash. Some holy water on her. No answer after halftime for Ryan Howard. A season-high time, 33, and the Dream up big.
From the floor and shooting the basketball, and it's all behind this player, Ryan Howard.
Another one from Ryan Howard. A 9th three of the night.
Thank you, Ben. Much appreciated. That is all for this episode. We also have a special bonus show that is live right now for our treasured Slate Plus subscribers. It is about the U.S. men's national soccer team. To hear that, you can subscribe to Slate Plus on Apple Podcasts by clicking Try Free at the top of our show page, or visit slate.com/hangup+ to get access wherever you listen. The episode is available right now, and we will see you there. Our show notes are at slate.com/hangup, and you can email us at hangup@slate.com. Don't forget to follow the show and rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It really helps. Our producer is Kevin Bendis. For Ben Lindbergh and Lindsay Gibbs, I'm Alex Kirshner. Remember Zelma Beatty, and thanks for listening.